Hi, I'm Shauna, this is Shauna's World. Welcome back to my channel where I make videos about living intentionally. If that sounds like something you might be interested in, all things hiking, adventure, breathwork, wellness, fitness, please do subscribe to my channel and then you'll get to see more videos on that. Today's video, I'm going to just be answering some questions in a Q&A on the Israel National Trail, which is an 1,000-kilometer hike which I thru hiked at the end of 2022. So there were some vlogs on that, and please do watch them. I'll link the playlist here. But I got a lot of questions through my Instagram Q&A box along the way, so I thought I would answer some of them here, and if you're thinking of hiking the trail, hopefully this will be helpful. I did actually film this video before ages ago when I was in Thailand, but for some reason the sound cut off halfway through the video and I just never got around to refilming it. So I'm going to split it into two parts just so that they're not quite so long. The first question is a gear question, and it was about anything you took that you didn't need or didn't take that you wish you had. So for the most part, I think I packed pretty well, and actually I did film a packing video my first night in Tel Aviv before I got on the trail, but it didn't work. So I didn't ever get to upload that, but I think I packed really well. But there were some things that I would change. So about halfway through the hike, I got rid of some clothes. I brought too many clothes with me, and I think I just underestimated how scuzzy and dirty I would be through the hike. So I always wore one set of clothes for hiking and one set of clothes when I wasn't hiking. So that was whether I was sleeping, on a rest day, doing laundry. And when I was packing, I thought, oh, but I'll need to wash those clothes. So I brought a little bit of extra. And then I also had some shorts or leggings for hiking. And it was just too much. So I left some of those at a hostel in Tel Aviv along the way. The only thing I can think of that I took and didn't use at all was duct tape. Even though I didn't use it, I never would have not taken it, because duct tape was for if, say, my tent broke or if my hiking boot or walking pole broke and I just needed to temporarily fix it. And I didn't need to use it, but that's something you just kind of always need just in case. One thing I did consider that I could have not taken was a warm jacket. So I took a warm kind of insulated jacket, and I did wear it a bit, but there was only one night when it was really cold in the desert when I was sleeping out that I really, really needed it. The other nights it was just a nice to have, or sometimes in the evenings in the desert when I'd set up camp. But I probably could have got by without it. But that one night that I really did need it, I think I'd have really struggled without it. And also you just never know. So I think whatever time of year you're going, there is a chance that you'll need an insulated jacket. So I think that was worth taking, even though it is quite bulky and I probably could have just about got by without it. The only thing I didn't take that I wish I had was a waterproof backpack cover. And actually I thought I had one in the pocket of the backpack. And then when I realised I didn't, I was quite anxious about it, that all my stuff was going to get wet. But I had some bin bags, and actually it rained a few times, but it was always once my tent was up or when I was on a rest day. So I just got really lucky and only got kind of a bit of drizzle and no serious rain. Oh, and I would definitely have taken a spare phone charger, because my phone chargers broke a couple of times and it was quite stressful trying to sort out. And one day was the worst I was emotionally, just because I was using my phone for navigation and connection back home. And iPhone chargers can be a bit dodgy. So yeah, I think I'd have taken a spare. Okay, so the next question is, were there any language or translation problems in Israel? So for the most part, no, actually. I mean, Hebrew is the first language in Israel and Arabic is the second language, but English is also pretty much a second language. So in most of the Jewish areas, people speak English as a second language and are fairly fluent. And then in the Arabic speaking areas, most people are bilingual with Hebrew and Arabic. So English is a bit tougher. But usually if you kind of approach a group of people asking for something, or you're in a shop or whatever, one person will speak some English at least. So usually you can get by. And the couple of times I struggled, I was able to get by with miming and it just wasn't really an issue. The only time not speaking Hebrew or Arabic was really an issue, and it was fine, but it could have been quite risky. So there was one day I was leaving, I think I'd been at a Trail Angels the night before, and I knew that the next day there was a part where the road was closed up ahead because A German woman I'd met in Arad had texted me and said, "Oh, just beware that this road is closed and you'll need to go around the Jeep track." And I got to a sign, and the sign was in Hebrew and there was a map. And I couldn't tell if that was just a heads up saying that the road's going to be closed up ahead. So, just kind of forewarning. And then I thought the deviation was further up ahead. It was just a kind of heads up. But then I wasn't sure actually if this was, please take a different route from here. And I stood there for about 20 minutes just worrying, trying to sort out on Google Translate, but I had no signal at the time. And I just took a punt that this would be okay. And it was further up ahead that I'd have to take a deviation because there wasn't an obvious place to go at that point. So I carried on ahead, and then it ended up being a point where you had to kind of clamber around these cliffs, and there are parts on the trail where you have to hold on to railings and there's ladders and things. But here the railings were broken and it was really dangerous. There was a sheer drop next to it, and I was like, oh, of course I wasn't supposed to come down here. And that was why the trail had been closed at that point. It was because it was so dangerous to hike on this bit, but it would have been too far to go back. Probably would have been the sensible thing to do, but I ended up going through the dangerous bit, and I was with someone else at that point, which was great because he'd done the same with the sign. He hadn't realised. Yeah, it turned out fine, but at that point, not speaking Hebrew or being able to read Hebrew was kind of an issue. And I did try to start picking up a bit of Hebrew and the alphabet on Duolingo, but it was very slow going and I didn't really get anywhere with it. Next question is, did you have any blisters from carrying the heavy sack? The answer is yes. So the first few days, I remember when I stopped for my first rest day, I kind of looked in the mirror for the first time and had blisters all down my shoulders from the straps, like really raw around my hips where the hip strap had been. And then I had some blisters on my feet on and off throughout the whole trail. But after the first bit, it did get a lot easier, and I put plasters here and on my hips, and then it just kind of stopped happening in those spots for the most part. But the feet did just crop up from time to time, and then I just taped them up and it was all okay, but it wasn't too prevalent throughout the trail. Although by the end of the trail, my feet looked absolutely vile. Okay, so someone's asked, were there many dogs on the trail? And this is from someone who's scared of dogs. So I would say a lot of the trail goes through quite built up places, through towns or through parks, and you might see dogs there. Same as you would anywhere in day-to-day life. But in the more rural and wild bits, I didn't really see any dogs. So if you're scared of dogs, I think it wouldn't be a bad trail to do. There's not dogs everywhere. Most people do it kind of as multi-day hiking and don't take dogs with them, but you will encounter them a little bit along the way. I did at one point see 3 what I worked out to be wolves. I'm fairly sure were wolves, but at the time I thought they might be dogs. But then, I had to look at pictures and there was no humans around, and I was like, they must have been wolves, which was just, bonkers. And so they were beautiful, and it was just really, whoa. Next question is, how often do you stop for a rest day? So I feel like for me, for the most part, towards the beginning of the trail, I was taking rest days about once every 5 to 6 days. And then later in the desert, where there are less obvious places to stop, I was aiming for once every, it was about 12 days without a rest day at the longest point, just because there were no logical places to kind of stop and have a rest or plug in your devices or whatever. But it turned out, because I had so many things go wrong and had to skip some bits and go back on some bits and do some weird things because of the weather, I ended up not going longer than 7 days without a rest day throughout the trail. And to be honest, I often found I needed a couple of rest days. I was quite full pelt and just doing all the trail admin, and then sometimes you're in an interesting place and you want to see it. And so I took more rest days than I intended, and actually I feel like if I planned it again, I would kind of budget for more. I think I actually really underestimated how much rest days are needed physically, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, all of the things. Another question was, what's been as you expected and what's been a surprise? So I found this a really interesting question because I really didn't know what to expect. I did have certain things I imagined in my head, but I really just could not get my head around what it would be like out there. I think the biggest different expectation was I totally underestimated for how physically hard I'd find the trail. And I was ill at the beginning, but really I found it hard throughout physically. And I think I just didn't, I thought, oh, I've just run an ultra marathon, I'm pretty fit, it should be fine. But it really took its toll on my body, and it definitely got easier, but it's a tough trail. It's not an easy one. And I think I just hadn't done the kind of long days, day after day of hiking in years, so I'd just forgotten what it feels like. And then the desert in general, I'd say that was the bit I kind of was most nervous about. So in a way I found it easier than I expected, but it was also really, really hard, like harder than I expected in some ways as well, the physical side and also the psychological side. But yeah, I think I was really just saw the desert as this whole kind of, I really othered it and was kind of like, oh, how do people cope? How do you do it? And you just kind of get on with it and it flows quite well. And you're like, oh, okay, this is quite manageable, but also it's really hard. I don't know if I explained that clearly. I think a big thing that I loved about it that I hadn't really factored into my head of things to expect was just the kindness of other people, other hikers, trail angels, people you encountered along the way. I mean, obviously, anywhere you go, you meet the kindest people, but it just sometimes, trail magic is the thing where things just fall into place, or exactly what you need materializes is exactly when you want it. And I really had not expected the level of kindness and support, and particularly after I had a traumatic situation, just the outpouring of love and kindness and support was incredible. Okay, and I think the last question I'm going to do in this video before splitting it into a part 2 is, what do you wish you'd known before you started? Okay, so there's one really practical thing, and someone else who's a tourist thought the same thing as I did, and it would have saved so much faff if I'd realised, and I think I might have said it in one of my vlogs, but when you see the trail marking, it's 3 stripes in orange, blue and white. And often they're just straight if it's a straight path. But if it's going around a corner, they kind of draw the path around the corner. So it's like a curve. But every time I saw that towards the beginning, I thought it was an arrow. So if you had 2 paths, it'd be going around this way, but I would see it pointing this way and then go off that way. And then I'd look at the map and be like, oh, this doesn't seem right. And it got so confusing. And it wasn't until about 2 weeks in that I realised it. And then I met another hiker and he said exactly the same thing. He'd been doing the same. So I think that's where the Israelis, I was mostly hiked by Israelis, and they have the advantage because they've grown up with these trail markings. Another thing I think I'd have done differently is connecting more with trail angels from the start. So trail angels are a network of local volunteers who either provide food or accommodation or shelter, like often someone with a spare room, or just who let you pitch your tent in their garden. They were phenomenal. And at the beginning I thought I wasn't going to use trail angels because I'm quite I like to keep myself to myself a lot. I get a bit self-conscious around other people, so I thought, you know, I'll just do it on my own and not really connect with other people. But it was after I had some harassment in my tent that I did start connecting with others, and it was just such a joy along the trail. And I found myself being a bit more outgoing, but also being okay about communicating my boundaries when I needed my own space. So yeah, I'd have done that from the start. And then the biggest thing I wish I'd known or would do differently if I did it again was I planned 2 months for the hike, and I would have given myself 3 months and done it more spaciously, make sure I'd finished it all. So I planned out my days really meticulously, as if I was hiking 25 kilometers every day with rest days, and then there was no leeway for if there were weather warnings or for if, you know, I was just slow one day. And actually I was kind of trying to listen to my nervous system and what my body needed, and I got sick at one point, and there were flash flood warnings, so there were loads of things that didn't go well, and because I had no leeway in my schedule, I just had to jump ahead on the bus, which was kind of disappointing, and I was fine with it because I just had the best time out there. But if I planned it again, I'd give myself 3 months. I had more wiggle room, could also stop for longer in rest days, do kind of side trips to see places, and yeah, just kind of absorb it all a little bit more, which I think I did. You know, when I met this other hiker who I hiked with for a couple of weeks on and off, he was really hiking like that. He had 3 months to do it, and I really got on board with his style. And before I started, I just didn't realise that would be my style. So that's good to know for any future hikes. Okay, so I'm going to leave that video there, but I'm going to do a part 2 with more questions that I was asked around the Israel National Trail. So if you would like to see that, please subscribe to my channel so you can be notified of when that's coming. And if you enjoyed hearing this Q&A, please give the video a thumbs up. And if you have any more questions, leave them in the comments box below. And if I get enough, maybe there'll be more Q&A videos, because if people are planning to hike the trail, I'd love to provide as much information as I can. I think it's quite a niche trail, but there's not a huge amount of information out there. So anything you want to know about it, just comment down below and I'll see what I can do. And thank you so much for being here and listening to me talk about this wonderful trail, which I'm just really enjoying reliving the memories of. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.